Hey everyone, thanks for joining your group again and being willing to dive in to a political conversation. We're calling this Talking Points, the perfect blend of politics and religion. You get to decide whether or not we live up to that title, but I hope that today you really enjoy the conversations that you get to have. Your leader was given a discussion guide for how to engage political conversations in groups. Believe it or not, a group can be and should be a safe place to have political conversations, all kinds of conversations. It's not a place for debate. It's certainly not a place for fighting, but it is a place for people who are friends, who are journeying together in what it means to follow Jesus, to be real, to be vulnerable, to be honest, to ask questions and share with one another and jointly take our next steps, take your next steps in following Jesus and applying the good news of the gospel to your life, to all areas of your life, including your political viewpoints. The question that we've been asking throughout this series is essentially this: are you willing to put your faith filter ahead of your political filter? Now, one of the questions that I've received has come from a variety of different sources. It's basically this: just get to the point and tell us who's right and tell us who's wrong. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm not going to try to do that. Personally, I don't think I have the right to do that. What we tried to do in this weekend's message might be ambitious, but it's an attempt to provide all of us, a roadmap, a framework for how to navigate all of this. How do we know where agreement should end and diverse opinions are allowed to begin? And we did that by talking about what Paul calls the law of Christ, which is essentially this: we're supposed to love each other in the same way that Jesus loved us. We cannot align ourselves with, we can't promote, we can't celebrate anything that violates that law of Christ, to love each other, to love all others the way that he's loved us. Now, the natural question is, well, Rick, what do we do? How do we handle this when we disagree? Okay, this is what we do next. We take the law of Christ, an unrelenting commitment to love, and then we apply this knowledge and wisdom. We have to keep adding information. We have to keep learning. We have to keep growing. And then we use those two things together to evaluate where we stand on policies, platforms, and political direction. And we're going to do our best. Where we can't disagree is the law of Christ. Where we can't disagree is that learning and more information is important and that facts are our friends. Where we can disagree is how to apply that. And this is my hope, that in your relationships in your group, your relationships in your family, your relationship with people in your world, and the kind of conversations and interactions that you have, that we won't be people, that you won't be a person, that we won't be people who assume the worst and that we fill in the gaps with negative assumptions about others. But especially when we're engaging fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, that we would say, I truly believe that they want to honor the law of Christ. And I truly believe that they're trying to do their best to do the best with the best information that they have. And if we disagree, it's just because maybe we're coming from different vantage points. Maybe they don't see what I see. And maybe I don't see what they see, but I will be gracious and I'm going to assume the best about them. Now, one of the things that we said in the message that might be a sticking point, it might be something that you all want to talk about, is this: where you stand often depends on where you sit. For those of you who are students of political history, you know that originally comes from Rufus Miles in the late 40s, and what he said was, where you stand depends on where you sit. I wanted to throw that word often in there because I want to give a head nod to those who are saying, we are not predetermined by our families of origin. All of our viewpoints and the things that we think and the things that we believe, they're not predetermined for us by environmental factors. That is absolutely true. You would have a good right to be concerned about what I'm saying if that's what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that. But it is true that where we come from, the experiences that we've had, the places that we've been, the things that we've read, the conversations we've had, the things that we learned, the things that we haven't yet learned, all of these things are impactful and they play a role in shaping our viewpoints. The challenge for us, and here's good news, is that we're able to do this, but the challenge for us is to evaluate, have I ever allowed those things to get in the way of putting my faith filter first? Because it's easy for those to come first. And so as you're talking, as you're discussing, and as you're listening to each other, let's just remember that. Where we stand often depends on where we sit. Your views truly are your views. You're not a moist robot. They are not predetermined for you. But there are all kinds of factors out of our control that shape how we respond, shape how we think, that shape how we engage. And the good news of the gospel is this: for every single one of us, we're not a Republican or a Democrat first. We're not white or black first. We're not American or Canadian or South African first. We are followers of Jesus first. He is our leader, and it's the faith that he's given us. It's his law of love that we place first, and we begin to view everything else in light of that. I hope you have a great conversation. I'll see you next week.